Okay, welcome to CS 232. Today we're going to be going over C# basic decision making, switches, and loops. So, this is going from the Whitaker book. And basically, if statements are a simple way to create code that has two separate branches. One case that we look at in Whitaker is that of grading. For example, if you get a quiz score with the grade greater than 90, then you receive an A. Otherwise, if you got one greater than 80, you got a B, so on and so forth, with each additional if being one grade lower. So that's one way of thinking about if statements. Another way is if you think about our continuing example of Dungeons & Dragons. Well, in this game, you commonly roll a 20-side die, and if your roll is over a certain determined number, you hit. So if you get, for example, over a 17 on your roll, you score a hit and something happens in that game. Or you can think of it as like a coin flip. If you get heads, then you've won. If you get tails, you've lost. And an if statement has what we call a corresponding conditional in between the parentheses. So if the score is equal to 100 and you use two equal signs for this, if score equals 100, then we write out that you have a perfect score and you win. So for example, if the score is equal to 100, first part of the statement is what we call a conditional, and then the conditional block gets executed. Likewise, if you score a perfect hit in Dungeons & Dragons, that means you've rolled a 20. So if roll equals 20, you have scored an automatic hit. And by the way, the area between the end of this conditional and here is called the context of the if, or the if block. This is the block of the if. That's the code that gets executed if the roll is equal to 20. Now the question comes up, what if you don't score a perfect hit, or what if you don't get a perfect score? That's where they bring up the else statement. And that covers the branch where it's not the conditional tested for. So in this case, if we roll a 20, then we've scored an automatic hit. Otherwise, we haven't scored a perfect hit, and we want some additional code to determine if the player really hit the target. Another thing at your fingertips is something called the else if. So, for example, this would be useful in our score example in quizzes. If the score is 100, we print out that we have got a perfect score and you win. If it's 99, we say you just missed it, else we put all our other cases in there. Sometimes you can eliminate the curly brackets altogether. So for example, if you have only one line of execution inside the if, you can eliminate those brackets. So we say if roll equals 20, then console right line perfect hit, else if roll equals 1, automatic miss, else, and then all the code block goes in here. So you can even mix and match. So like for example, this one doesn't have curly brackets. This one line gets executed. This one doesn't have curly brackets. This one line, then else has brackets around it, and you can put any number of lines you want in between the brackets. You cannot, for example, put any number of lines you want in between the if that doesn't have brackets. If I was to write another line here, it would not get executed only in the case that the roll was 20. So these are the following operators you can use in your conditionals. You can use equals equals, not equals, less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. So here's some example grade calculation code. For example, if you got greater than or 80, you got an A. If you got less than 60, that's the case where you fail. Here's a full example in Xamarin. Okay, here we go. So we say if score equals 100, write out perfect score, you win. If score is greater than or equal to 90, write out you got an A. Else if it's greater than or equal to 80, you got a B. Otherwise you got a C or you got a D. That's sort of the general structure of if, else if, else if, else if loop. And then follows an if. And what you have to do is if we run this code, we can then type in our score. So for example, let's say I got an 84. I can type that in and it says we got a B. We can also use bools inside of conditionals. So bool is a way of knowing if you should enter a code branch or not. That bool that you use can also be set in other statements. That's kind of a common thing to do. For example, check this out. So if our score is 45, what we wanted to do is see if we've got the correct number of points needed to pass a level. So if our score is greater than or equal to the number of the points needed to pass the level, then we say the level complete is true. Otherwise, we say the level complete is false. Some might call that a trigger for level complete being set to true or false. Then finally, if the level is actually complete down at the bottom, which is a separate part of the code, then we say you've beaten the level. So this is a whole subsection of if-else on its own that's only designed to set the level complete bool, and then down here we test it. So these are two separate purposes that we're using these if-else loops for. So for the first part of the lab today, you should perform the try it out exercise on page 63. And that is in the Whitaker book. Here's a slightly more complex example with the not operator. In this case, we say bool level complete equals score greater than or equal to points needed to pass. Note that you can essentially put the conditional score greater than or equal to points needed to pass right inside of bool level complete. And you can say if not level complete, then write out your line that you have not completed the levels yet. So you can take the result of that conditional, that gets cast into a bool, and then you can say level complete equals what that is. There's other types of operators you can use inside of ifs. For example, here's an AND operator, which is 2 ampersands, and OR operator, which is 2 pipe symbols. So you can say if the shields is greater than 0 or the armor is greater than 0, then write out that you're still alive and keep going. And this bit of code assumes that you're still alive if you have either armor or shields left. You can also do nested ifs. For example, here's a nest if where we say if the shields is less than or equal to 0, and then if the armor is less than or equal to 0, then write your shields and armor are both 0, you're dead. Else shields are gone, but armor is keeping you alive. And then this second else goes along with the shields, and it writes that you still have shields left. So in other words, you can nest ifs inside of ifs, inside of elses as much as you want to. And your second part of lab today is to try it out on page 65. And we will go on to switch statements in the next lecture.